Welcome to another exciting episode of Scuttlebutt, the official podcast of the National Museum of the Surface Navy, coming to you from the Battleship Iowa. And I am in my remote office. My name's David Canfield. I'm the technical guy, or whatever you want to call me. We've got our boss. What were we going to call you? The warden?
Am I the warden?
The warden, because you're the head of the institution. We have Dr. Doolittle with us.
Yeah, he's Gomez now.
He's Gomez now. He was Burt Reynolds 2 days ago.
Yeah.
We'll call him the Bandit. Smokey and the Bandit.
He's got a mustache now for those only listening, so he bears resemblance to people. That's going to be
There we
stuck
go.
in
We
my
have
head.
our illustrious producer, button pusher,
Hello.
skater extraordinaire, Marianne Fangler, and
She's the Ice Queen.
Nuts and Bolts, Mike Getscher, our Chief Operating Officer and Chief Engineer, and we are going to be talking today about treasure hunts and treasure finding.
I think you should start, David, because you found that amazing piece of treasure for you in that first few weeks or months of our existence.
It was kind of funny. It was actually found by one of our first volunteers, a guy named Russ Farnell. And I got this phone call. I was still working at a certain search company there in Silicon Valley. And my phone rings. I pick it up. He says, "Hey, David, I found your keys while I was cleaning the overhead of the battleship in the wardroom." And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." He says, "Well, I know they're yours because they have your dog tags on." And I was like, "Dude, I haven't had my dog tags on my keys since 1987. And he says, "Well, I'll throw them in your mailbox." So the next time I got to the ship, I go to my mailbox and I pull out a set of dog tags that has one of my father's dog tags and one of mine and a single locker key on it, which I lost November of 1987 within my first couple of days of coming on board the vessel. And honestly thought I would never see those again. And that was certainly a good personal treasure for me. And it's one of those things where people ask, "You ever wonder if you're where you're supposed to be?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm pretty certain I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be."
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, we're finding treasures in the bunks that are coming out.
Yeah, it's actually amazing. There's Dear John letters, there's pictures of family members, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
Enough cards to fill Las Vegas.
Condoms, you name it.
Well, I mean, there's original Playboy and Penthouse subscription cards even.
A salt and pepper cassette tape.
The cassette tape was
the salt and pepper cassette tape.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that sitting down there and brought back serious memories. I had a shipmate of mine on board here, Brendan McCauley, and we found a Dear John letter in the rack above his. So he goes, "Oh, I'm still in contact with that guy." So he took a picture of it and texted it to him. We got a response back, just what I needed, a 37-year-old Dear John letter.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, man.
Another thing that happened to the ship, and forgive me, I've got the classic frog in my throat today from a
ribbit.
Sinus infection. Some years ago now, somebody reached out to our curator, Dave Way, and said, "We've got a book in the family, and we're going to send it to you. It's a guest book." And Dave's like going, "Okay, what is it? We don't really know." And he I think he had a couple of pictures sent to him of it, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, this is the original guest book." But then he lost contact with the individuals, and he didn't even know what was going to happen. Suddenly it shows up in the mail or FedEx or something like that, and it's stunning. It's the original guest book. It's signed by FDR, the entire entourage. Hap Arnold, Harry Hopkins, just George Marshall, King, Ernest King, and everybody was there. The entire group is there, plus tons of heads of state over the years. So it's the guest book from 1943 to 1958, and it literally just shows up on our doorstep. And it's an extraordinary piece of history. It's got artwork in it. It's just amazing. All these people, congressmen and other important figures. It's just a stunning piece of history that we have that just shows up on our doorstep. Another thing that we found, what's that, salt and pepper?
Wow, Jonathan, you pulled it up right on cue. Great timing. Sorry. I'm trying to remember salt and pepper. My apologies.
Yeah.
Good.
That's funny. And what else showed up on our doorstep? So when we got the ship, there was a piece of equipment missing in aft plot. It was this huge bombardment computer called a Mark 48. And they're rare, as we say, as hen's teeth. They were only installed in the 50s on big gun cruisers, the 8-inch cruisers, or battleships. And so there was probably only a couple dozen, if that, ever made. And it's just missing, and there's no rhyme or reason. Nobody knows where it went. Nobody has any record of it. And we notice there's one back in Norfolk somewhere at another museum, and we're kind of envious, thinking it'd be kind of cool to get it. But it's their collection. We don't even think about it. Well, that collection was dispersed to other organizations, and one of the other organizations called me up one day and said, "Hey, Mike, isn't it a Mark 48 you need?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I got one. It's yours." And literally, that's what happened. It just falls in your lap because you know somebody. So this amazing piece of equipment, this technology that was added in the mid-50s, basically allowing you to put a chart on top of a table and shine a light where you want to point the guns to, and then it does all the calculations for you. It ends up in our lap. We have to go back to the East Coast, and in this epic journey through snow, we managed to get it over here. But it's just amazing. And then on top of that, the epic journey to get it down inside the ship. Which is an extraordinary effort. The entire team and multiple departments had to work on that, take it apart. It weighs almost 3,000 pounds. And it's old technology, and we have to go find all the manuals for it and figure out how to take it apart and put it back together. And it largely functions now. So it's an amazing piece of history. It completes a portion of the ship, and then what's even better is that the entire team on the ship gets to work with it.
Yeah, and it was so cool watching that too, because it went literally into the ship, down 3 decks, and then we used the I-beam on Broadway to get it into the space where it needed to go. So we were using the equipment on the ship to restore a piece of the ship. It was amazing.
Yeah, we had to open up the soft patch in the backside of the plot room. What a great effort on the part of the team. It was really cool.
Well, and for those who haven't seen it, it's the size of a dining room table, and it is solid. It's huge, which begs the question of where did it go and how did it get out? Because it must have been somebody with the expertise to lift all those pieces out of there. But it's unfortunately, we do see pieces walk off that are not so large. But
and with that one going back in too, there were literally maybe 2 inches of clearance on the side of it to slide it between the other pieces in the room. It was just amazing.
That speaks to ship design too, because you have to actually design things to fit down through the hatches that they have to go into. Right. And you can sometimes see if you're walking around the ship, and this is kind of geekdom here, but you can see where they've cut extra openings in the doors to get machinery inside, because you have to. There's no way to get the stuff out of the armored citadel that easily. It has to go through an armored hatch. That's all there is to it.
Let's talk about things that walk off.
Yeah. The one thing I want to talk about.
Well, the one thing, like I even noticed in this, for our listeners, one of the problems we have is people like to put their hands on things around here and grab things. I noticed last week in the captain's cabin, somebody had been working on the door handle on the bathroom, trying to get it off. Had pulled all 4 screws out and had it on its way out, but I think the mortise hinge or the mortise lock is what stopped him from pulling it all apart.
What?
And so
it's not just artifacts either. We end up with situations. We put some nice hand-blown glass food that had been detailed out on the mess decks on the line, and I saw a guest who literally had both hands on a glass ear of corn and his foot up on the serving line trying to tear it out of the tray, which caused us to have to put up a Lexan barrier. And it's unfortunate because it really takes away from presenting the ship the way you want to when you have to keep people from stealing stuff.
Well, one of the things is the plaque. The original plaque that was on the bathroom door in FDR's cabin, which I kind of remember it being there, but I may not remember it because I've seen pictures of it. At some point, it was removed after she was decommissioned in the 90s. I don't know where that ended up, and we had to recreate the plaque based on a picture we have. So somebody out there has that original plaque that was put on that door. Yeah,
there's a lot of things like that. Just recently, we had somebody come back and return the rudder angle indicator plaques from the steering gear room. I think people, this is the sad part of people taking things from the ship. They think it's cool. They got a piece of history, but it sits in their garage for 20 or 30 years. And if they have a conscience, they might send it back. And that's what's happened numerous times here. But oftentimes it's just lost to history.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I feel a little called out. The battle lantern that is behind me on the video call came off of Iowa in 1989 when I left. Yeah. And it'll be returned.
We would like that back, please.
Yeah.
When I
that
die,
is our
probably,
property. That is our property.
That plaque from the bathroom door is actually on David's bathroom at home.
It probably is.
Actually, it's not. I have 2 items. I have the battle lantern behind me, and I have a piston from the emergency diesel generator, both of which were stolen by a very young sailor who didn't know any better, and both of which will come back to the battleship probably with my estate.
Yeah. Getting back to other
Talking
things.
about your estate, are you a John Paul Jones legacy giver? Now that you brought up the estate,
I might have to be to return that stuff.
Okay. Well, in Kyle, the development department has set up the John Paul Jones Legacy Society where people can leave something in their estate in their gift, and so you brought that up, so I figured sounds like you may be becoming a John Paul Jones Legacy Society member. So go ahead and get with Mel on the team in development and get the, identify yourself as such with the paperwork, so we can make sure we provide you those benefits that you deserve that are over and above your employee benefits already. We'll be able to provide you those benefits of recognition at an early stage in your life.
In all seriousness,
Before
I would
you're
challenge every one of my shipmates to become a member of that John Paul Jones Legacy Society. And I would also encourage them as they, get later in life and they're downsizing to go ahead and send that stuff back. We did get a nice brass belaying pin. A couple of those have been returned. A number of things have come back anonymously.
Yeah, that happens. We also have junk show up. Frankly,
This is true.
we have, in fact, Dave Way, our curator, excuse my voice, but he's gotten to the point where we often turn things down because we have multiple copies of certain uniforms or other things like that. We're looking for things with both a real connection to the ship or to the surface Navy, something with some real provenance too. Really understand. We've also had somebody drop off a artillery shell or a gun shell. And it was just, to me, it's still hilarious and funny because something you have to do is to check and make sure it's not live.
What's talking about junk? I mean, or not even junk, talking about drop-offs, things like that. I think we're already selling some of the stuff, lockers and life rings and things that we pull off the ship in the store. I think at one point we were even looking at expanding it. I mean, if you want to give us those uniforms and and we tell you clearly we may not be using it and we're going to deaccession it and sell it, or you're just going to drop it off and we won't even accept it, we'll just turn around and sell it in the store.
Yeah. You only have so much room to store this stuff, and you only need so many copies of anything. Like, for example, when I was at the World War II Museum in New Orleans, I talked to one of the curators there, and he says they have one copy of every gun ever used in World War II. One example.
Yeah.
Literally one example of everything. And he says you don't need multiples. Or you might have one or two extra M1s or something like that, but not too much. You only have so much storage space. There's some practical considerations here.
Yeah, we're going to have to start really narrowing in on some of that too as
Right.
we design the museum and figure out how to display things.
Yeah. We have some other cool things too. One of the chairs from the wardroom on the Nagato showed up, and I don't remember if it was part of the IVA collection or somebody.
Part of the IVA collection.
Yeah, and so
I
that's
think it was part of
extraordinary.
IVA.
Yeah, the Nagato was the last remaining Japanese battleship in Tokyo Bay at the end of the war, and it was kind of semi-derelict and used as an anti-aircraft platform, but it was captured by the Iowa crew, legally captured.
With that, I do remember one thing that was donated to FDR's cane. We have FDR's cane
Right.
that
Yeah.
that actually turns into a seat. Yeah, it turns into the handle. The handle actually folds out and turns into a seat.
Right.
Yeah, we do have FDR's cane. I forgot we had that.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that is cool. That's
Wow.
cool. And then
I had
just
no idea.
this last week, and I think you're going to do a post, or you have
Yeah,
done a post.
we could do a post.
The Chicago Museum of Science and Industry had reached out through HENSA to offer up a bunch of artifacts that they had. And a lot of them were what I would call mundane or relatively normal stuff for the 1980s Navy. There was a lot of submarine consoles and control things and switches and panels and stuff like that. But mixed into all of that were a set of what we call big eyes. That's the big binoculars that you might see on a ship. And they're so big you have to have them on a stand. And initially when I reached out and said, yeah, I'd like to have the big eyes, and I didn't look at them too closely in the picture that's presented, and it wasn't marked very well. And then the lady there, the registrar, Deanna, said, it's not available because somebody else got it. I said, okay, no problem. Well, she reached out a week later and said, you know what, the big eyes are yours. You're next in line if you want them, because the first person backed out. I said, sure, I'll take them. And she sent a picture, and I looked a little bit closer at it, and it's like, holy moly. It's actually got the marking for the Prinz Eugen on it, the German heavy cruiser, which was with the Bismarck when she sank the hood. And what even more interesting to me is that the Prinz Eugen was a war prize for America and later became the USS Prinz Eugen and given the hull designation IX-300. And she sailed with American sailors and some German sailors as well. And ultimately she was essentially expended in the atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll. And she still exists upside down and mostly underwater at the Kwajalein Atoll where she sank. But it's actually part of Surface Navy Museum history. And so this artifact and they recognize that, sure, it's the Prinz Eugen binoculars, but they don't really have any displays or any connection to it. And it came out of the Chief of Naval Operations Office back in the 50s. Got a little bit of confirmation on that, and I found some more information since then. So things like that come to us on a irregular basis, but it's wonderful when they do, and you have to be ready to go. I ran back there to Chicago and drove them across last week, and along with other artifacts, of course. But it's important. The stuff that we need and the stuff that we want, or the things that have relevance to the ship, they're going to come at you at various times, and you don't really have a lot of time sometimes, or even money. You just got to go figure out how to get them. You can't miss that opportunity, because these things really are often very, very rare.
So was it end of 2020 when you went back to the Charleston?
Yes,
something like that. When you're going on a, you can explain what that was, but when you're going on something like that, what are you looking for? What kinds of things are you trying to get to bring back?
It's kind of hard to describe. First off, I'll describe what was there. The Navy has kept spare parts for these ships literally for 75 years. And those parts consist of anything from original, brand new, what I would call original equipment manufacturer, OEM parts from the 1940s. They had fans and special components. They had fixtures. There was whole engine blocks, David. In fact, there's a brand new diesel generator with the generator attached in a box on the second deck hold.
Like the big ones from AMR?
Exactly.
That's a big box.
Yeah. I think 16,000 pounds. And there's also just boxes of other stuff. And there's also 1980s components and, just spare parts is what it was. It was a huge cache. I mean, literally hundreds of these things called tri-walls, which are 4-foot square or 4-foot cube cardboard tri-wall, really thick cardboard boxes. And so when I go there, I'm usually looking for things that we truly need. When I look at the Iowa, the ship is largely complete. There's only a couple of missing pieces, and of course we got the Mark 48, so that was a big deal. I think I'm missing physically down below one of the reduction gear pumps, or red gear pumps as I call them. But beyond that, we're looking for things that we can use. It could be electrical components. The rotary switches we have are really important to us. I was looking for breaker components, because these breakers, the big electrical breakers of the switchboard, are now 78 years old. And so if I can get parts for them, that's really important to me. There's motors, actuators, and stuff like that. So we're always looking for components like that. Beyond that, I was usually looking for history too. So that'd be documentation and trying to find some specific document that might help, understand something aboard the ship. In that case, most of the documents were all from other ships. The Missouri and the New Jersey, for some reason, it didn't have anything, or they were buried deeper, and I just couldn't see them. But we go there and find things that we truly need. We actually run the ship. We maintain the ship. The rotary switches, for example, are an older version that are no longer made. I can't get them, so they're unobtainium, as we call it. Just a kind of an odd thing.
Well, and it speaks a little bit to the ethos of the organization as well. Just the way we put that Mark 48 in, we didn't just plunk it in place because that's where it belongs. It's actually hooked up and largely functional. And so we are always looking for parts to try to keep the ship alive in the configuration in which she's being restored. And that's not just stuff on the tour route. We want the whole ship to be as functional as we can.
Yeah. There's one thing funny, I think, that you asked that I comment on today too. We're restoring CEC, or the Combat Engagement Center, and Bill McNally was looking for parts. And these parts are really hard to come by. They're Tomahawk missile consoles, which are essentially classified in some form.
They don't typically make them available for the public.
No, they're not. They're not down at Best Buy. And same thing for the Harpoon consoles. And there's something called a SPA 25, which is a repeater, like a radar repeater, whatever you want to call it. And there's other things that are missing. The CWIS console that we just ended up fabricating, something that's so realistic, frankly, that people are literally just a few weeks ago from a movie company looked at it and didn't realize it was fake. One amazing find was Bill was over in a junkyard in like a scrapyard in Anaheim, California, here near Disneyland. And he literally looked up on a rack and found the Slick 32 electronic countermeasures console. The entire console was there. It had been demilitarized, which is an important component of that. In other words,
to be clear, it was empty.
It was empty, yeah. But the entire console was literally there. So it's an amazing thing. You find these things out there. You have to go look.
That was a pretty funny story too, because we were told point blank, you may not ever have a Slick 32 console.
Yeah.
And I had a number of people on the technical team, some of whom were naturalized citizens, which affects your ability to get a clearance and causes, people who have those clearances to get uptight, who did not know that the Slick 32 is a piece of gear that is still in use in today's Navy.
on.
And we're calling the manufacturer, asking all kinds of technical questions about, how it worked and whatnot, which generated a call from Department of Homeland Security and a few other people to me going, "What are you doing?" And I had to tell them, I'm like, "Please stop. We are not restoring the Slick 32 because it's still a very sensitive piece of gear." And then Bill turns around and finds the console sitting in a scrapyard and brings it back. I was like, okay, cool.
Well, and what luck to have such a kind of, I guess, broad reach of crew members here that would be in that place at that time and recognize something like that.
They're always searching for things like that, and they hear, and it's kind of a network. I think it's true of aircraft restorers and other things like that, or even automobile people. The Model T collectors. There's a whole world out there. Ours is a smaller, more finite world, but there's stuff out there that you can find, and it's been modified in some way that you can't use it to go do something inappropriate. It's just the way it is. But we want the console. We can fake it. The rest of it, making the console is kind of a pain.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of comes back to we're moving away from the traditional museum. We have all these incredible artifacts. They're fascinating to come and learn about, but how do we integrate those sparingly while still trying to tell the mission of the surface Navy? And so I think that's kind of what we're doing now is how do we speckle those in throughout your tour route? And it looks like Jonathan has something to add to this.
I think I figured it out.
Oh.
What?
We take the Planet Hollywood approach.
Put in a casino?
Well, we've tried that.
That would make more money too. I noticed Kyle perks right up.
Yeah.
No, the Planet Hollywood approach is obviously we have these very engaging exhibits that we look forward to, engaging experiences, immersive experiences that we look forward to releasing soon. But you have transition corridors between immersive experiences, and within those transition corridors, you're able to put on display on those bulkheads different artifacts, as well as the more traditional story that goes with those artifacts. So I call it the Planet Hollywood approach.
The Ace Frehley guitar from Kiss on the walls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and we've got that one corridor of bunks that curve right along T2. We could do something seriously cool like that, right?
You actually utilize the space that is a transition corridor that we're not able to build an immersive experience in, but you're able to add flavor to that corridor by doing the Planet Hollywood approach to things. And it brings that transition, and it brings alive the traditional as well as transitioning to the future.
Yeah. I mean, and that speaks to the
that
entire...
was my idea.
That's why you're the warden.
Clearly comes back to Planet Hollywood, but to those people who are not Planet Hollywood aficionados, what it really speaks to is...
Hard Rock Cafe, then.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, yeah, but it talks to striking that balance between being a fully immersive attraction experience and then actually dealing with the artifact that is Artifact 1, which is the battleship, and keeping that at the center of the story of the National Museum of the Surface.
It's really interesting talking to other museum professionals because they don't live in their artifact.
No.
Yeah.
We do.
That's a huge statement because, the museum people are wonderful back there in Chicago, but they don't have to live in their artifact. They can treat their artifact as an object, and they conserve it and they protect it. And here it's kind of a different animal. We're trying to conserve, protect, restore, but we also have to use it, and that's a huge thing for us. It really is there's a balancing act. We've talked about this before. It's really important.
Our artifact has a past, present, and future to it.
Yes, it's very relevant in today's conversation.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way of putting it, pal.
We I want to test that Hard Rock Cafe thing. I think I'm going to put my coveralls from 2011 into a glass case on the wall.
What an Easter egg.
I'm going to put a mannequin in it, like a whole frame, and I'm going to spread it out, and I'm going to put it up on that little table.
Room.
You came into my office last year, right before Freedom of the Seas, and you had those on. You had stuffed a pillow in there, and I was gobsmacked. I could not believe it.
And it still wasn't tight enough.
This is the perfect comment. We're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, we're going to need a bigger boat. Yeah, we're going to need a bigger boat. I filled those, Moran. I filled those I filled them to the limit. It was hard to zip up. They were not loose. You were a
big boy.
Yeah, I was a huge man. A couple peanut butter and jelly sandwiches
the Beatles
at lunch.
in the background because suddenly you're only half the man you used to be.
Okay.
Yeah, I am half the man I used to be in very many different ways.
I remember when you fell down on the
eyesight.
7th deck. It scared the crap out of me.
We're going to come back to that in our next podcast.
Are you?
Yeah.
There we go.
We're gonna talk about it.
I wonder if the chain
So-
fall was going to be able to handle us.
I was thinking crane, frankly.
All right, so
We're 25 minutes in.
yeah, we're 25 minutes in here. David, you want to
Does that mean is that cue the out music?
cue the
Is
out
that what you're
music?
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
DJ
guys,
Jazzy
thanks for
David.
joining us. Wait, go ahead, Jonathan.
DJ Jazzy David.
DJ Jet. No, I'm not spinning any kind of vinyl.
Quick,
I
go.
just have the Mr. Announcer person voice. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Scuttlebutt, the official podcast of the National Museum of the Surface Navy. If you have comments, questions, I would normally say rude gestures, but those are hard to email. Please send them to podcast, PODCAST, podcast at labattleship.com. Or as those of you who have been listening to this like to, or have heard me call it labattleship.com, podcast at labattleship.com. We will take your suggestions for topics and constructive feedback on how we can make this better. And be sure and join us next time for another exciting episode.